Almost Innocent. Chapter 1. The Sound. I imagine the following. Waves were lapping on a distant shore. Galaxies whirled, powered by a low hum, as if someone was humming the sound of all life. The sound vibrated within everything. It was constant. The sound created life. Within this cascading and unstoppable orgasm of sound, vibration, pulsation, and vibrant color, there was something that so purely spoke of home, a home that had no beginning, middle, or end. Its vibration enriched the very fabric of this profound and abiding sense of belonging. And as the sound increased its vibration and urgency, another universe created itself. With tingling divisions happening at a velocity of near frenzy, the sound organized randomness into order. I watched as my body assembled itself. I watched like a lover watches the sunset. I watched with amazement. This body had a purpose, and its purpose was to create itself. And like a city being erected from the ground up, in fast motion, the cells carried out their duties with an inexorable and insect-like precision. The conductor was the sound itself. The orchestra was the body, a beautiful symphony of creation crescendoing to a near-deafening pitch. And at the crest of that musical mountain of sound, I fused my awareness with this body as it kicked and twitched into life. She now presided over this continental aural landscape, giving constant assurance of safety, survival, and comfort. The many textures of the sound, with its undulations, pulsed like the ancient memory of waves alternately lapping and crashing in my consciousness. And underlying the whooshing of fluid everywhere was a drumming, coming from her, constant, assuring. A deep sonorous thumping at times that shook like the thunder from a dark tropical isle, followed by a gentle rain. And like the sun, it was warming. Constellations of sensation and prismatic color heaved and swirled. The sound was alive with creation, and the creation was alive with sound. Gently rocking on an ocean of warmth, there existed the profoundest comfort, and sensing the sweet dulcet tones of her faraway song as she spoke, a profoundly deep relaxation stilled this awareness of mine, until it was like a deep and clear pool. The melodic incantations from her voice lulled me into a state of profound relaxation, even though this body was creating itself at breakneck speed, as tiny organs sprung to life and my little heart pulsed in sympathetic rhythm to hers. Not only food, the sweet elixir of life, but the knowing was issued into the center of this body of mine. This wisdom of all time, the tones from her musical voice reverberated with ancestral memories. Memories of her mother's song, stories woven into her mother's song. Memories of the song of creation. The soft rise and fall of her voice vibrated my being with the mental impressions of all time and of all life, everywhere. Hearing her voice was like listening to the song of all the mothers of the universe, singing to each other the song of love, singing each other into existence, the song of life itself. And all time ran together in the water world. And though the tidal moods of the ocean changed like the faces of the moon, the ocean was always there, gently rocking. The ocean whispered eternity, and never was there doubt about my belonging, not for a second, of this wondrous kaleidoscopic time spent being one in the primordial comfort of her water world sanctum. My thoughts were her thoughts. Her thoughts were my thoughts. I lived for her, and she lived for me. We were one. I floated and basked in the supernal and exquisite warmth of her ocean, in the warmth of the womb. I was in the cradle of all life. My being was in the belly of all there was. There was nothing else. This ephemeral water world was my home as well as the deep drone of the sound that created me. The end of the sound. Like a soft, dark cloud, this body of mine went numb, just as the sound became unsettling. The colors that made my home comfortable and warm became angry and unfamiliar. The eternity of my ocean womb came to an abrupt and violent stop. There came to be a flurry of unfamiliar sounds, violent quakes. The gentle lapping of waves were now crashing violently, and where these billowy walls once enfolded me gently like a cloud, they became a menacing and impersonal enclosure, now intent on expelling me from the soothing comfort of the sound. I tried to oblige the spasmodic urgings of the walls around me, but my body wasn't responding. My body was suddenly limp and unresponsive. The sublime, muffled tones of my mother were now sharp. A cacophony of other voices frightened me. My world was changing. The world was changing, a blinding light. There was the sound of panic and shrill crying somewhere outside in a distant universe. I was assailed by loud, aggressive sounds that felt brittle, metallic, and unsettling. This body of mine twisted, heaved, and fought. My limbs rigidified and flared. Racing to make sense of this new galaxy of cold colors and shrill sounds, the warm and watery embrace had now become a world of seeming infinite cold space. Chilled, unfamiliar, and more than anything, separated from her and absolutely terrified. I needed to know where she was. Where her presence could formerly only be felt, there was no feeling her, no hearing her. The faraway voice was replaced by loud noises that quaked my body. Loud noises that felt unsafe, loud noises that shattered these tender ears. My eyes serving up nothing more than blurry holograms of a new universe, I looked for her everywhere. I looked but couldn't see. I looked frantically, but couldn't see. Bereft and alone like an astronaut, I dangled in space, precarious and utterly alone. Then, there she was. An angel amidst the chaos and disharmony of strident voices, clanging metal instruments, and frantically moving rubber hands. Something allowed this one single apparition to pierce the blurry veil, and though she was barely visible, she was younger and more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. Tendrils of wet hair clung to her face, like Amphitrite coming up for air after a long swim in her warm Neptune sea. There she was, the quest complete, together again. Our eyes locked, and we gazed at each other with what seemed to be a rapturous eternity. We were in love. But if only I could have touched that soft, warm skin. My lifeline to her was severed. I panicked, and something else was terribly wrong. A sudden and unexpectedly urgent breath for air came pushing into my lungs as they inflated like a billowed sail. My little chest seared with the antiseptic dryness of this new and foreign gas. Air. This enemy, air, came between me and her. I was now cold, separate, and powerless. The distant, far-off, and frighteningly shrill cries kept speeding closer toward me, with the inexorability of a speeding night train. I was terrified. Amphitrite was terrified. These people I'd never heard before handled me with an abruptness that was foreign to my ocean world. I was poked and prodded by cold, unfeeling hands, measured and weighed. All I wanted was my mother's skin. Cold metal was shoved against my skin. Swabs were forced up my nostrils, and both my eyes were abruptly daubed with something that stung like the dickens. A bright light felt like it was boring a hole into my eyes. My body was on fire and cold at the same time, and no one was there to let me know I'd be all right. No one. My perfect universe was gone in an instant. The perfectly sustaining universe providing food, protection, and cleanup gone. And the world as I knew it was forever changed. Where we were once one, we were now two, and the initiation into two-ness felt foreign and rude. The sharp sound of crying that started out so far away now rang in my ears, and the crying was now suddenly coming from me. I just wanted the assurance of knowing I was safe, the feeling of skin and not the cold, impersonal, and lifeless touch of linen, metal, or wood. I needed her desperately. She seemed spent, bewildered, and distant. I was separated from her. My chest burned and ached. No one seemed to hear. No one seemed the least bit concerned. I had just stepped into hell, and there was no apparent way back from where I'd come. An eternity of tensing my muscles and crying for help gave way to a fitful, albeit merciful, sleep, and just when things couldn't have gotten any worse, a searing pain shot to my brain from my groin as my skin was dispassionately cut off by the rubber-gloved guys. What was this place? I'd gone from such comfort into a world characterized by such unfeeling savagery in a matter of minutes. Who were these guys, anyway? This was planet hell, and this was my welcome. All I wanted was to be held and never put down. All I wanted was to be held